Hi everyone, my name is Romy and welcome to my channel. For the first series on this YouTube channel, I wanted to start by going through the absolute basics of music theory. Whether you are just starting your musical theory or if you already have some experience but want to understand theory better, I think this series could be a great help to you. I will be going through many of the most important building blocks of music theory, like notes, scales, chords, harmony, and rhythm. And you can find a playlist of these videos in the description. In the first video, I hope to give you an idea of what music theory is, why people think it's so important to learn, and how it can be useful to you as a beginner. Before we start, I do want to say that while this series focuses on basic music theory, it will still contain a lot of different terms that might be new to you and might be hard to remember. Learning music theory is a bit like learning a whole new language. So to make it a bit easier for yourself, I recommend taking notes so you can write things down in a way that makes it easier for you to remember. I know that helps for me at least. Also, please ask any questions you have in the comments and I will answer them for you. Alright, in this video I'm going to explain what music theory is. But first I want you to think about a more basic question. What is music? I mean, we all know what music is, of course. You're not gonna listen to an excavator digging and be confused. Is this music or is this not music? But still, I think it is useful to try to think about what makes certain sounds music and other sounds not music. Try it for yourself. If you were writing the dictionary, how would you define music? You can pause the video and write it down or just think about it for a bit and then continue. Here are some things that you might have included. Music is something people play using instruments or your voice. And music has things like notes, chords, and rhythm. Using this list as your definition is pretty good, but it isn't perfect. Not all music has chords, for example, or even anything other than rhythm at all. Then some music doesn't really have any rhythm. And if you play a song on Spotify, it will play through the speakers of your phone or of your headphones. But I wouldn't call a speaker an instrument, right? And a step further, something like Suno AI can now generate music all by itself with just a click of a button. Would you call this AI an instrument? Personally, I wouldn't. So our definition isn't perfect, but it does work for most music. Now, even as a beginner, you probably already have an idea of what instruments, notes, chords, and rhythm are, even if you don't have an exact definition. But imagine that you didn't know these words at all. It would be very hard to define music then, wouldn't it? I think that this really is why music theory is so important. It might seem basic, but when we use words like notes, chords, and rhythm, we are already using music theory. Music theory isn't just confusing symbols and Italian words. Music theory is really all of the language that we use to describe music, even all of the basic stuff like notes, chords, and rhythm. And just like with a regular language, we don't need to know all of it before it can become useful to us. Let's say you want to go on holiday to Poland and you want to learn some Polish. You are probably going to learn to say things like, can I get a menu? I would like to pay with cash. Or where is the train station? Things like that. You are, for example, not going to learn how to talk about the geopolitics of Central America in the 1800s. Not only would that be very hard to learn when you don't know any Polish yet, it's also almost certainly not going to be very useful to you if you are on holiday in Poland. And not even all people who live their whole life in Poland can talk about, for example, quantum mechanics in Polish. So I think you should learn what is useful to you and not worry too much about trying to understand everything before you start playing music. And well, let's dive into that. What are some of the ways that music theory can be useful, especially for you as a beginner? One basic way is that people who teach music use music theory all the time. If you watch other YouTube videos, if you read books about music, or if you have a music teacher, they will expect you to learn all sorts of terms and symbols. Because it is just the most effective way to teach and to learn music. Secondly, understanding how a song or a piece works also makes it faster and easier to learn. Music contains all sorts of patterns. One pop song is really not going to be all that different from another pop song. They use many of the same chords, the same types of melodies, and the same types of rhythms. So if you can recognize those similarities and if you have words for them, it's much easier to learn songs because it will already be familiar to you. And thirdly, if you want to write your own music, you probably want to play something that is similar to the music of your favorite musicians. But you don't want to just copy them directly. So when you understand what those musicians are doing, it becomes a lot easier to take their music and to change it to make it your own without directly copying them. One thing I do want to mention is that while music theory can be very useful, it has also been created across centuries by many different smart people who were very skilled at playing music, which means that for you as a beginner, a lot of things may seem confusing or unintuitive because it isn't immediately obvious why things are like that. So just remember that if you come across something that seems unnecessarily complicated or just kind of stupid, there's probably a good reason for it. Sometimes there really isn't though, but often I would say it is sensible. Just try to remember all these terms for now and hopefully soon enough it will start to make sense to you. In this series on the building blocks of music, I won't go too deep into why music is the way that it is, but I'm planning to release a video in the future where I will go through some of the most confusing things in Western music theory and explain why we do it like that and how actually they are still useful. Well, that is all I wanted to say about music theory for now. In the next video, I will go into what notes and scales are. Again, there will be a playlist in the description, and the next video should appear on screen soon too. But before I go, I want to put a bit of a disclaimer here. So in this video series and on my channel in general, I talk a lot about Western music theory and Western music styles. Something that you hear a lot is that music and music theory are a universal language that are shared by all humans. But I don't really agree with that. Music theory is a tool that we use to describe music, but people all over the world play music in very different ways. So they use different language to describe that music. So just like how people speak different languages in different places, their language of music theory is different too. The music theory of the Western world describes Western music styles well. Things like classical, pop, jazz, and rock. These are styles that are very popular all around the world now, but it doesn't do a good job of describing music styles that are very different to these styles. For example, South Indian Carnatic music is very different. And similarly, the music theory that they use to talk about Indian Carnatic music does not describe Western pop music very well. So I would say that music and music theory are something that are universal, but I wouldn't call it a universal language. Just like how language as a concept is universal to all humans. But for example, English is not a universal language, even though a lot of people speak it. Most music theory on this channel will be Western music theory, because that is what is most commonly taught where I live. But sometimes I will highlight other traditions when they are relevant or interesting. Anyway, that's the end of the video for real now. Please subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and if you live in the Vancouver area and want to hear a little more from me, I also teach in person. I teach music theory, like here, but I also teach guitar, ukulele, bass guitar, and piano. Well, alright, I'll see you in the next video then. Bye!